Hi, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of Eye on the Eagles. I'm Sports Information Director Tim Hackett. It's our basketball preview episode. We'll talk a little bit about bowling later on in the show, but we want to get both of our basketball coaches in for the first time this season. And so for the first time this season, we are joined today by head women's basketball coach Remy Wolfe. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I wanted to say, first and foremost, congratulations on your finishing your first season as a college head coach. You are not new to Avila by any means, but last season was your first year as our head coach. So I guess I just wanted to know what that process was like for you, what the experience was like. What were some things that you took away, things that you learned that you're going to keep with you for the rest of your head coaching career?
Yeah, last year was definitely a learning experience. We didn't have the best year record-wise, but definitely learned a lot, developed a lot. I think it was just really good for us as a program to, as a whole new staff, just develop a lot of core foundations and kind of the way that we operate and run things as far as practices and things like that go. So it was a really good foundational year for us, I think, as far as building up a lot of those returners and giving them good experience and kind of training them to lead for us in what we expect. So it was good.
What specifically were some of those things that you were trying to instill, you were trying to bring in for your returners, that you guys were trying to establish as a coaching staff? What were some of the specific things that you were trying to work on, and do you think that you were able to do that?
Yeah, a lot of just structural things as far as like being more of a player-led team instead of a staff-led team. And I think this year our juniors from last year, who are now seniors, Daisy Washington and CC Eddy, are doing a really good job in the locker room and in practices and things like that on handling things so the coaches don't have to, and they've really stepped up and have really grown as players and leaders in the last year. And I think a lot of that is from last year, kind of what we developed in them and set standards on how we want things done from their perspective, and kind of just putting a lot of that on them and not necessarily on us. So they've done really well.
That's awesome. It's important, I think, to have some of those returners, players that have been with you now, not obviously as the head coach, but they've been with you now for a couple of years. So was that kind of, did that make the transition easier for both parties, both for you stepping into that bigger role and for them now stepping into roles as upperclassmen? Did having that familiarity, that experience help with that at all, or is there still a lot to learn?
No, it definitely helped. I had 9 returners last year and took over midsummer, so I wasn't really able to recruit as far as that goes, and only brought in two new girls. So having 9 girls back who had been through, the last couple years with me, and like you said, Cece and Daisy this is their 4th year with us. And then several other girls who graduated last year have been with us for 3 years too. So they knew me well, obviously, and had all played with Maddie and Tiff on the team, so they knew them as well. I think most of the things that were different that I brought from our old coaching staff were just some tactical things, offense, defense. But other than that, it was nice to have a large group of returners that kind of knew what we expected from the get-go. So.
And there's none of that this year. There's no, only had a couple of months, couldn't recruit, because you guys have done a ton of work over the last couple of months to bring in a lot of new players. Like you said, there were a lot of those multi-year starters, upperclassmen. They graduated. They're not here anymore. But like I said, you guys brought in a ton of new players, freshmen, transfers, some upperclassmen, really kind of refilled the ranks all across the board. So what was that process like this summer and in the months before to just build this team that we will get to see in action for the first time next week?
Yeah, so we brought in 7 new players, and like you said, was a lot of different pieces, a lot of work in finding those girls and making sure that they're the right fit for our team. And we're pretty particular in what we look for in recruits, and I think the 7 that we brought in are really great kids, really great players. So we've been really fortunate with what they've been able to do so far, and we're really excited to see all of them play and everybody playing together here next week.
And because it's coming up next week, it's part of the reason why I wanted to have you guys on the show this week, is because for you, you're 7 days out from your first game of the season, which is hard for me to believe. I imagine it's kind of the same feeling for you as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy when you start in September. It feels so far away, but then it comes so quickly. But
strap in.
yeah, no kidding. We're excited though. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We have a really fun group, lots of energy, lots of really good kids on our team that bring a lot of positive energy, a lot of really good energy. So we're really excited to get going.
And Avila fans are not going to be used to seeing a lot of the names that will be out there on the floor for you guys. You were telling us before the show that obviously a ton of new players, like you said, a good number of returners, players that have been on the team for 2, 3, or 4 years. You mentioned the 4 years Eagles, which I always think is really cool. But in terms of the starting five or the featured players, a lot of new players, which I think speaks to all of the work that you guys have done in recruiting and coaching and building a brand new team compared to last year.
Yeah, I think we only have 12 players right now that are going to be playing, and we're going to be able to rotate pretty deeply with those 12. It's going to be new people probably each night that are kind of highlighted for us, and I mean that lineup's always evolving, so throughout the year it could be different people in big roles for us, and luckily we're pretty deep. So that's very exciting for us too, because in the past several years we haven't been as deep as we are this year, and that's going to be a really big thing for us in the way that we want to play, and as fast as we want to play, we're going to be able to rotate through a solid group of them, and on any given night, I honestly don't know. It could be a different person that's going to be leading the way, so we'll see.
And that's kind of exciting, right? Because I mean, to your point, at least offensively, and I realize there are a lot of other things that go, unnoticed, and players like Daisy Washington, Kayla Navy the last couple of years, Katie Frazier were able to do other things that don't necessarily translate to scoring 20 points per game. But my point is that in the past few years, there have typically only been 1 or 2 players that would typically carry the load on offense. And last year that player was Hannah Smith, and she is back. But now it seems like there might be more candidates, I guess, to put up some points for the team this year because it's deeper. There are more options that you have, different lineups, different formations that you can go with to change things up compared to last year.
Yeah. That's a really exciting thing. On any given night, I mean, Hannah obviously is an incredible scorer, incredible shooter, she was the best by the numbers in our league last year from 3. So obviously she's a huge weapon for us, but we have a lot of other really good weapons, and especially in the post, which we haven't had in a while, so that'll be a nice new look for us. But on any given night, I think we have a handful, 3, 4 people that could put up some high scoring nights for us. But like you said, I mean, that's the good thing is as coaches we see the other little things that people do, and the rebounds, the defense, and things like that are definitely things that we look for as far as minutes on the floor and impacts and things like that. So we have a lot of new girls that bring a lot of that kind of energy as well, and will do a lot of that for us too. So
first game of the 2023 season a week from today. We're shooting this live on Monday morning. First game is next Monday night against Park. What can you tell us about the Pirates? What do you know a week out from Game 1 this year?
A week out from Game 1. Park, they play in the Heart, so they're always playing good competition every single night. It's one of the top conferences in the nation for us on the women's side, and they've had ups and downs. I don't know really how they're going to be this year. They have some new transfers who I think are going to be pretty solid for them that I know from the area. So it'll be a good test for us starting out. I think they've been in the lower half of their conference the last several years, but really doesn't mean anything when you don't really know what's coming for this year. So we're ready to play. We're going to play hard no matter what, and just kind of go out there and try to do our thing, see what happens.
Going into year 2 for you as our head coach, what are your expectations for the team, and then more succinctly, what are you most looking forward to for yourself and for this team this year?
Oh boy. Expectations-wise, I think who knows what happens wins or loss-wise, but just as long as we keep it consistent and go out there and play hard and play Avila basketball the way we want it to be played every night, then that's kind of what we're looking to see and expect from the girls, just that there's a standard of how we play, and that's how we're going to play every single night. And whether we win or lose, I don't know, but just the high level of basketball that we want to play as a team. Like we've been talking about, I have a lot of talented players this year, and we're really excited about them. So, hopefully we do pretty well, but there's no telling what could happen. And yeah, I mean, we're just excited to go.
We're excited to see you out there. Yeah. It all comes to a head finally a week from tonight, Monday night on October the 30th. Avila women's basketball will kick off the 2023-24 season against Park. You can find out details on how to watch and follow the team all season long on our website, avilaathletics.com. Coach Wolfe, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Tim.
Eagles start their season next Monday night against Park, and then their first home game coming up on November 2nd. So stay tuned. All details on how to watch and follow along, as always, on our website, avilaathletics.com. That's women's basketball coach Remy Wolfe. We'll be right back on Eye on the Eagles. Welcome back to the latest episode of Eye on the Eagles. Sports Information Director Tim Hackett now joined for the first time this year by head men's basketball coach Tyler Bredehoeft. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Appreciate it, Tim.
And welcome to our team officially. Really our second time for us and for our fans to get to see you in person, if you will. We had Media Day last week with the KCAC, but wanted to get you guys on the show this week because we're 10 days out from your first game as our head coach. How are you feeling? Now we're just about there.
We probably need 10 more days. We probably need 10 more days. It just comes so fast. Got hired in July, and we're just recruiting and we're trying to get all the pieces in as fast as we can. And then school's here, and then getting the guys settled in classes, and then preseason's halfway done, and now we're 10 days away from playing. It just happens so fast. It's exciting. Our guys are ready for it. I don't think our staff's ready. We think there's a million things we still need to get better at and work on, but I know the guys are getting ready for it. They're excited, and they can't wait for it.
How much of that can you work on once the ball is actually thrown up and the games actually start? I realize stakes are higher because there will be a win or loss decided at those points rather than just a practice, but how much better can a team get during the preseason, during the first however many games, 6 or 7 you have before the real games start and when conference play starts in mid-November?
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of learning going on, I think, in the first 2 weeks. Figure out who we are, where our deficiencies are, what our strengths are, how can we play to our strengths, how can we clean up some of the things we need to get better at. We've not to jump too far ahead, but we've got 6 exhibition games. Typically teams will play 2 or 3 and have a couple scrimmages. So we just don't have those scrimmages this year in the preseason. So we're trying to do some different things in practice to give our guys live looks and try to get some game-like experience in practice, so that way we're kind of ready for that game 1. But I think we got Columbia to start, and then we play UMKC on that following Monday. So we'll find a lot out about ourselves though in those first 2 games. Kind of like you mentioned, it's going to count though. It's not a freebie where we just get to go see how we are and then regroup after that. Like, it's going to count on the wins loss. So we're trying to do everything we can in practice to get those guys some reps and experience of what it's going to be like when come game time with foul calls and officiating and timeouts and things like that. So there'll be a growing process for us for the first 2 weeks. Hopefully we can get some wins in there too, though. That's
got to help, right? Just the mentality, the feeling of being prepared, feeling of being ready, and just getting your collective feet under you. Playing any game, I imagine, will do that. But then once you start getting some wins and stringing those together, that's got to help team morale, all that stuff. And for you guys as coaches, you mentioned that you're feeling like there's still 100 things left to do, but one of those first big things is checking that first win off the record books, right? So once you do that, whenever it comes, that's got to be a big weight that's probably will be lifted, right?
Yeah, we want to build some momentum. Now we're playing a really tough schedule to start the year. So wins are going to be tough to come by, but we want to make sure that we're competitive in games. Obviously, if we can finish in the win column, that's going to be great. But to start the year, we just want to make sure we're doing the little things right. We're playing hard. We're competing. And if the ball bounces our way in a few of those, that's great. But we got to make sure that we're just getting better and better each game. That way, when conference play comes, we're hopefully starting to hit our stride a little bit. But building momentum is going to be huge for this team. Getting these guys to believe, that we can win games, we can be competitive, we can put a good product out there. So I know guys believe that right now. What's going to happen if we get punched in the mouth a few times? And how we respond is going to be everything with that, with our guys. I know they think we're going to be able to walk into any gym and compete. And our staff believes that too. But not everything goes your way all the time. It's not sunshine or rainbows every single day. There'll be tough days, and how we respond to those days is going to be how far we can take this team this year. So we're I'm getting more excited talking about it now.
Great.
Before I was like, but we want to get out there and compete because I think we have a group of guys that want to do that. But we've as a coaching staff, we got to prepare our guys for the worst. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst type of thing. So that's kind of where we're at. But building momentum will be huge with wins, and then And, anytime we hit adversity, is using that adversity to make us better as we move forward.
Anytime that people leave this conversation or any conversation with me feeling better than they did when they started is a plus for me and a plus for this show. But you mentioned it a little bit. The non-conference schedule is grueling. This is not a new thing for this program, but you guys are playing 6 or 7 games against NCAA Division I or Division II teams, and that is something that I feel some schools in our conference do occasionally. What I've seen over the years is maybe they'll play 2 or 3. Obviously, we'll give them the plug. Ottawa just played Illinois the other day. That's a very unusual thing, but you guys are playing 6 of those NCAA schools, which, I think is really cool. I know that, in the past guys have liked that opportunities because it's different. You don't ever get to see those schools because you play in the NAIA. It's just how it works. But I guess, what are your expectations for that? Not just in terms of wins and losses or whatever, but what those opportunities could give your team, the players individually, and the team as a whole. What do those games do?
Sure, those games are going to give us looks with bigger, longer athletes and guys with really good high skill sets and coaches that are really good that coach at a high level, and we're playing a lot of teams in those 6 games that have been very successful at the level that they're at. So it's gonna give our guys a look of what we're gonna see when we run into top 25 NAIA teams. We're gonna be better prepared for games like Oklahoma Wesleyan, Kansas Wesleyan, Columbia College, our very first game. Teams like that, when we see them hopefully later in the year or around Christmas time, our guys are prepped because they've seen those type of athletes, they've seen those type of players. So I think it's going to just prepare us in terms of how we're going to play when we match teams maybe that are just physically a little bit bigger than us, and we got to be able to find different ways to be productive in those games to give ourselves chances to win those games.
That's exactly what I was going to ask next. It feels as if that's kind of the main goal, I guess. There are other benefits, I guess, to playing those games, but I keep hearing every year, and we heard this a little bit at Media Day last week in the KCAC about how good the conference is, and vis-a-vis other conferences in the NAIA. I'm not sure that we have a ton of schools, end to end in the conference that are likely as good on paper as a Truman State or as Kansas City or whatever. But the point is that once you've already seen those schools, the Truman States and the Kansas Cities. So now when you go in to play the best teams in the conference, like you said, Kansas Wesleyan, Oklahoma Wesleyan, and so on, now you're better prepared because you've already seen other good team. It's not like when you play Oklahoma Wesleyan for the first time, that's the first really good team that these guys will get to see. You already have that in-game experience against a good team.
Yep, sure. It's just getting our guys prepared. We're if we've seen length and athleticism before, and teams blitzing ball screens or doubling the posts or different things like that, it just helps our guys. As we get into games that are really going to count for conference. They're prepared. They're ready to go at those guys.
You're new to us. This is your first year as our head coach, but you're not new to the area. You're not even new to the KCAC. You've got plenty of ties around here. What has the process been like for you over the last couple of months since we formally brought you in as our head coach? Now to get ready for that first real game in about 10 days. What have the last couple of months been like for you?
It's been relatively hectic. Finally, got a house. Finally settled.
Good
in.
for you. Awesome.
And that first month felt like we were just the staff. We were just on the phone. We were calling every coach that we knew. We were looking for every player that was still available. Trying to put ourselves in a situation 10 days from now to where we're ready to go. So it was a blur the first couple weeks, but it was good to reconnect with coaches in the area, and the high school coaches and the junior college coaches, the 4-year level coaches. Just being back in this area, it's been great in terms of that. And I've always, Avila, and not just myself, but other coaches have always said, Avila is a place where good things can happen, and it's in a great spot. And now KCAC is in a league that is very well recognized nationally. So it's super exciting to be back in the area, and really happy to be at Avila. And I think things can be we can get things rolling here hopefully sooner than later.
You guys have worked really hard, yourself and the coaches, to build a brand new team. If we're being totally honest, there's not going to be a ton of players that Avila fans will recognize from last year or the year before on the roster this season. Some of that is because we had a lot of 3 or 4 year seniors that graduated this past year, so that comes with the territory. But you guys have brought in a ton of new guys to just completely, not just retool, but completely rebuild this roster going into this 2023 season. So I guess quickly, before I let you go, what are you most looking forward to about those guys, and what do you expect? What can we expect from the team this year?
Yeah, we've got quite a few new guys. I think there's 11 transfers on the varsity roster and 2 freshmen. And then we've got 5 returners, I believe, 5 or 6 returners on that roster as well. The guys coming back have been great. They've really bought into the culture we're trying to establish and how we're trying to do everything, our expectations, building good habits. They've done a very good job of buying into that. And the new guys are just, they're eager as well. They've all come either from junior college programs or another 4-year program. Some of it maybe was, they weren't really kind of fitting where they were at on the other team, and some of them were some of the best players on their team, and they're transferring in, from a junior college. So there's a mix of everything there, and they've all done a very good job of buying in what we're trying to do, and that's the biggest thing. We get everybody on the same page, and just building good habits and good daily routines and doing everything like we're supposed to. The wins and losses will take care of themselves.
You've had some experience with this, I'm sure, over the last couple of years as a junior college head coach with so much roster turnover. That's literally par for the course at the junior college level, I know. What has it been like to come into a new situation, bringing in 11-plus new guys into that new situation with you, and trying now to put all those puzzle pieces into place? You're going to pick a starting 5. You're going to have your rotation from there. Has that been a fun challenge as a coach, or has it been stressful more?
Yeah, you sit there and you try to play with different lineups and find guys' strengths that complement each other well, and you're just trying to build the best roster or lineup as you can. It's not necessarily always your best 5 scorers or your best 5 defenders. You have a good balance. We do a lot of things in practice, stat-wise and film-wise, where our staff is able to kind of evaluate what different players are good at, and we just try to find good roster balance when we're kind of setting those lineups and setting those rotations. So, it's kind of like playing fantasy football with with your guys, like who's going to be here, and he complements him really well, and so it's just trying to find a good rotation of what certain guys do well and what certain guys don't do well, and making sure that we're just putting a very balanced lineup out there.
We're really excited to see those guys, that lineup, out there for the first time. Next week against Columbia, the Tyler Bredehoeft era of Avila men's basketball begins. The Eagles will finally kick off the 2023-24 season next week, as I said, on the road against Columbia. You can find all the details on how to watch and follow our team all season long on our website, avilaathletics.com, as well as our social media and the team's social media. Stay tuned to both of those for all details and info as the season goes on. Coach Bredehoeft, thank you for being here.
Appreciate it, Tim.
Thank you for watching Eye on the Eagles. We'll be right back with our next coach. Welcome back to this episode of Eye on the Eagles. Sports Information Director Tim Hackett now joined with our final coach of the week, head bowling coach Paul Wolfe. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Thanks, Tim.
And welcome back from Wichita, the Mid-States Championships this past weekend, which I know is always one of the biggest events on the schedule for you guys. And I guess I wanted to start by asking why that is, because you guys are going to some, big events. You're doing some competitions in Las Vegas at the end of the year, but this is always one of the biggest events on the schedule for any team. It's a Tier 1 event. I guess, can you just tell us what makes Mid-States such a big deal? And it seems like it's been that way for a while.
Well, Mid-States is it's the oldest collegiate event. I believe it's the oldest collegiate event in the country, and it's going. I think this was the 46th year. It's been won by some fantastic teams. A lot of Wichita State teams have won. Nebraska has won. There's just been some fantastic bowlers walk through those doors in those two Wichita bowling centers that have gone on to professional careers, and it's a big deal.
You have done such a good job explaining to me how the sport works, not just physically, what happens when you throw the ball and leading up to that, but I mean just like how the actual sport is run. So can you tell people who may not know what is a Tier 1 event and why does that matter so much in this sport? A
Tier 1 event is it's worth double points, and that gets you to postseason. So the more Tier 1 events you bowl and bowl well, I mean you don't have to win, but you do need to place fairly decently. That gets you to postseason, to the ITCs, and that's where the national championship is. That's not the NAIA national championship, but that is the USBC national championship, and that's what really is. If you're not an NAIA school and you're not an NCAA school, you're a USBC school, which means you have no affiliation with either one of those entities. This is what you're looking for, and NAIA schools and some NCAA schools also can qualify for USBC ITCs through those tournaments, but that's the only way you can qualify through those tournaments.
Is by competing in Tier 1s and other USBC sanctioned events, right?
Yes, correct.
So there are some programs, some schools that are either NAIA or NCAA, obviously, and also USBC certified, but there are some that are only USBC eligible?
That's correct,
okay.
Yes. As a matter of fact, if you look at the top 8 on the men's side of this tournament this past weekend, the top 8 were all USBC only teams. On the women's side, there was a pretty good mix of NAIA, NCAA, and I believe Newman women won.
Yes.
And they're an NCAA. This is their second year in NCAA competition.
Okay.
So, but one of our main competitors, Ottawa, they finished in the top 8. They're an NAIA only school, but participate in USBC events. We are an NAIA only school, but we participate in USBC events. So, it's the field's super tough.
It feels like this is always one of the biggest fields in terms of simple number, the quantity of teams, but also one of the best fields that you guys compete in terms of quality of teams.
Yeah, it's a strong field.
Why? And is that simply because everybody realizes that this is events like this carry literally some more weight to it, some more seeding points, some national eminence?
Absolutely.
So it really draws a lot of teams from.
I mean, the men's on the men's side. I mean, they came down from Wisconsin to bowl, and they end up winning it. So I mean, you get teams from all over. I remember the first year we bowled it, we crossed with Sam Houston State, so they drove all the way up from Houston to bowl that in a weekend. So it's a big deal, and the points are there if you can have a good weekend.
This is a unique sport. I feel like we say this all the time, but it's unique compared to other established NAIA sports, I guess, in the sense that you have the opportunity. Any team has the opportunity to compete for 2 different championships, 2 different postseasons, because you can qualify for NAIA or USBC, or maybe and USBC if you're that good. But so a team has the potential to participate in and compete for 2 different postseason berths by the time the year ends.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, and so that is the goal for a team, to be good enough to compete, to contend for both of those spots.
And honestly, it's harder to win the NAIA than it is the USBC to qualify.
Yeah, there's fewer teams.
Right. Well, there's fewer teams, and you have to win your tournament to get in, and you're the only team that's going to get in. So with USBC, they take the top 80 teams in the country, and they'll have sectionals, and so the top 4 teams from each sectional will go to the championship tournament, which this year I believe is in Reno. So you actually have a better shot of qualifying for that national championship than you do for the NAIA.
And 8 teams, not just your teams, but 8 teams' performance in an event like this, a USBC Tier 1 event like Mid-States, really dictates. I mean, like we said, it's weighted more heavily. You get more points for competing and competing well in events like the one that you guys were just at.
Yes.
So how well then did your team do relative to that? We see the final rankings. Both teams finished in the top 25 of their fields, which looks like a decent number to me. But in terms of those USBC points qualifying for nationals, or for sectionals first and foremost, and then for the USBC nationals, how good is that relative to what you were hoping for or were expecting?
I was actually hoping for a little bit better finish for both teams. It's okay where we finished. I would have liked to have finished a little bit higher. Sure. But it was our first Tier 1 of the season, really our second tournament. The first one was, we had a decent showing, but it was a very weak field. So we have some work to do.
And that's kind of your biggest takeaway from seeing all of these. Because there were, like you said, so many good teams from all over the place converge on these 2 different bowling centers in Wichita, of all places, to compete at this high, but big marquee event. So you get to see some of these. You mentioned Sam Houston State from a couple of years ago. I talked to you about this last week before you went. You get to literally match up in lane pairs against some really amazing programs.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you win those head-to-head, because no one's really tracking head-to-head wins or losses. It's all about total pins. But you get to physically see right next to you, either to your left or to your right, some other really, really good teams, which has to set a barometer for you for the rest of the year.
It does, especially with the 2 Wichita teams, their men's and women's teams. I mean, their men's team is so stacked. Bowling on the same pairs with them or bowling near them, it's, I think 3 or 4 out of their top 6 are on Team USA. So they're representing the country.
All right.
So, they all know how to bowl a little bit. And so it can be very intimidating.
Sure.
And on the women's side, same. They had 2 or 3 that are on Team USA, and there's a few scattered out throughout the rest of the field. So yeah, you get to see where you're at, and I think we have a couple players that could be and are close on the women's side and on the men's side, but we're not there yet. But we did okay. Our top players did okay. So I'm taking that away from this weekend.
Individually, who are some of the players that you were highlighting that you could walk away with, impressed with, proud of, happy with their performances? What were some of the highlights?
Aiden Tesdall bowled pretty good. He averaged, I think, 192 for the 6 games of team competition on Saturday, and Devin Coleman finished, I think, in the top 15 on the women's side, and she usually finishes somewhere in there. And we're hoping she has the same year she had last year, and she drags the rest of them kicking and screaming.
And that's just how it works, right?
And I tell you, Claire Bush had, she threw the ball great. She got no breaks in the team event. But if she'd have gotten a break, she'd have finished in the top 15 too.
One of the things that you mentioned before we went on that I wanted to make sure I asked you about these events, you mentioned the competition level is good. There's some eminence to it. There's some history to this competition. All of that, yeah. But you mentioned that these events are harder. The lane conditions are harder typically than you might find in some other places. Is that on purpose? Is that by design? Do they put those extra? Did they make it more difficult knowing that you've got really good teams, you've got some history, you've got some eminence, all that stuff, or is it just kind of a coincidence? Like, why is it harder here versus maybe some other places?
No, I think it's. I think they do it on purpose. I think they make them harder on purpose. You want the best teams that are making the best shots to win, and the cream always rises to the top. And the longer you make the format, the harder you make the lanes. The best teams and the best bowlers are gonna win every time. When you make a condition easy, when luck plays a factor into it, the best teams don't always win. And, I like them hard. It lets you see what you need to work on, number one, and it lets you see where you stack up against the better teams. So I'd rather see them hard. Now, sometimes I think they make them too hard. I didn't think that this weekend. But we have bowled some stuff where they're like ridiculously hard. I mean, even our own tournament last year was, I thought, once we got done and Mike and I sat down and looked at the pattern and the scores, we probably made them a little bit too hard.
Really?
I think we went overboard a little bit. Yeah, we did. It was a frustrating weekend. Thank goodness we came out on top with the women.
Able to win it, yeah.
But we made them super hard. And that wasn't intentional. It's just how they ended up.
It's interesting. So, I mean, that wasn't even the design. We didn't go in and say, all right, let's make this the hardest tournament that these bowlers will ever compete in this year. That wasn't the thought process. It just fell that way.
Right.
Interesting.
That's just the way the lanes broke down, and the way all the teams played them is what dictates how hard they're going to be. Now, like when we go to Indianapolis, when the women go to Indianapolis this year for the Hoosier, they're going to be hard, and they're going to be hard before you even get in. Before you even get to Indianapolis, they're going to be hard. The guy who runs that tournament is notorious for making them really, really hard, and so that's we'll know that going in.
That's what's so hard, I think. I mean, now this is a conversation we have across all sports, but that's what's hard about even trying to bring in some stats in your sport, because if a team doesn't compete in an event like that, where a good average would be, well, you tell me what's going to be a good average at Indianapolis on the women's side, 160?
I think 170.
170.
Yeah.
But so that's, I mean, you had Devin was close to 190 this weekend, so it's obviously a huge difference. And if a team doesn't compete in that tournament, then obviously they won't have their averages dip just by, and obviously you could do well and bowl 170 and have your average on the season go down, and somebody who doesn't compete in that tournament won't have that happen.
Well, right, and that's when you look at for all the end of year stuff, for all the awards, you got to look at the strength of schedule and see what they bowled. And if a team didn't bowl the Hoosier, you got to, or any tier one really, you've got to take that into account. They didn't bowl the hard stuff. And that's what all most coaches are looking at, and they're looking to bowl all that hard stuff, because that's what matters for the end of the year stuff.
Will coaches pick up on that when it comes to all conference?
Absolutely.
They will take strength of schedule and the quality of competition into account.
Yep.
That's pretty cool, because then it's more than just all right, these 5 had the best averages, there you go, point, plain and simple. It does get a little bit more technical than that.
Oh, absolutely. And and just for our KCAC awards, it has to be, now, we don't all bowl every tournament together.
Sure.
So we have, as a committee, picked out, I think it's 5 tournaments this year that are going to count for postseason awards that all 4 teams in the KCAC are participating in. Unfortunately, Kansas Wesleyan didn't participate this weekend.
Oh, okay.
But they will be participating in Lawrence and Topeka this weekend, and I think in Hastings, Nebraska, our tournament in Belton, and the 2 other tournaments that are going to be in Lawrence at the end of the season. So we'll take all those averages and apply that to our postseason stuff.
And that's really smart. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something that we talked about last year. Literally levels the playing field, because you guarantee that everybody plays on the same conditions. So there are no statistical outliers by somebody playing on a really easy or really difficult condition, really easy pattern, whatever, because you're all on the same one. So things can vary, obviously, from lane to lane, we understand, but across the board, there's not going to be that much variance from lane 2 versus lane 22.
Right. That's the goal.
That's the goal.
That doesn't always happen, but that's the goal.
Interesting. There's so much that changes. There's so much variance in this sport, which is really fascinating.
Well, the thing is, you can't see it. It's not, everybody loves to compare golf and bowling, but in golf you can see the hazards. Bowling, you can't see the hazards.
It doesn't help me in golf. It doesn't matter if I can see it or not.
You can see water, though.
Yeah,
you can see sand.
Hopefully.
You can't see that in bowling.
No, it doesn't stop me from hitting into it, I guess. This is a busy time of year for you, and we'll wrap up with this, because it's 4 straight weekends of competition, and so I want to give you a bit of a breather on my end. So the next 3 weekends are not as big, I guess, relative to this one, because it's rare to get as big as this past weekend. But just really quickly, I guess, what are you looking forward to most for this upcoming tournament, the Jayhawk Classic?
The familiarity. We know both those bowling centers really well. It's close. We don't have to spend the night.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little bit easier on us travel-wise. The weekend after that, we're in Hastings, Nebraska. That's about a 5-hour trip. Smaller field. But it'll be a fairly tough field too, so we're looking forward to that. And then the weekend after that is the Leatherneck in the Quad Cities in Iowa and Illinois, and that is the biggest Tier 2 event in the country. There'll be almost the same teams you would see at a Tier 1, even some teams from Michigan that are coming down, Indiana. You get a lot from Illinois. It's a super strong field, and it's usually a fairly low-scoring event too. So that's a long weekend.
This is what's so much fun about this sport is that things change week to week. You see a lot of the same opponents, same faces in new places, type of thing. But the quality of competition may not vary necessarily, but how the competition works, the formats, the lane conditions, all of that changes from week to week, and that is what is. I mean, it's fun for me to try to evaluate because you never know what you're going to get sometimes.
You have absolutely no idea. They don't tell you until normally when you get there for the coaches meeting on Saturday morning. So we don't know we don't know what equipment to bring in. It's just guesswork, really.
And that's done by design, I'm guessing, to make sure that everybody's
on the same page, right?
And there's nobody that then hopefully that has that inside information, like the tournament organizers don't necessarily know how it's going to play.
It's supposed to be a gentleman's game. So you're not supposed to, if you're hosting, your tournament director, which is never the coach, should know what the lane condition is going to be and not the coach. So you hope that there's some integrity involved.
Fingers are crossed.
Right.
Well, we'll see what those lane conditions are and what the field's like and what everything else is like. 3 more straight weekends of competition for Avila Bowling. The action is really heating up here in the 2023 half of the season. It's the Jayhawk Classic coming up this weekend, Saturday and Sunday in Topeka and Lawrence. As always, you can find details on how to watch that and follow along on our website. You can live stream all of the action from Lawrence and Topeka on the Avila Bowling Facebook pages. Coach Wolfe, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Tim.
And thank you for watching this episode of Eye on the Eagles. Thank you, as always, to Tanner's at Redbridge for hosting us. The space has been awesome. Thank you to executive producer Darian Miner for all of his work on the show. For all of us here at Avila Athletics, I've been Tim Hackett. We'll see you next time, same channel, 11:30 a.m. every Monday, right here on the Avila Sports Network for the next episode of Eye on the Eagles. We'll see you then. Until then, so long.